On This Week in Sales, we're going to be taking a look at research showing what the buyer's top 10 deal makers and deal breakers are. Ford partnering with Salesforce to make a Uber CRM, laying off 900 people with a Zoom call, and much, much more. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder of salesman.org, and joining me, co-host of this show, sales royalty, Victor Antonio. Victor, how's it going, my friend?
I am doing great, Will. I think I told you before that got on the call here. I had a little lazy week, man. So it's been good so far. I know it's only Wednesday, but I don't know. I'm cruising into the holidays. How about yourself?
I am getting ready to have some time off for the first time in a long time this Christmas. And we've just touched on this before the show as well. I've almost feel, Victor, like we've got our production system for content working almost seamlessly at this point. Now, of course, things are going to come and derail it now that I've said that. It's sod's law. But I feel like we're moving things are almost too easy right now, Victor. Is that me being pessimistic or is that me being optimistic? I'm not sure.
I'm just a little skeptical. But yeah, I mean, with too much technology, I mean, we're talking by the way, for folks who don't know the obvious, Will's in the UK, I'm here in the US. So this, in and of itself, is a technological miracle, Will, if I can say that.
It is. It's mad. I'm doing all the switching. It's all done live. I saw one comment on last week's show that was for sure live saying that we pre-recorded it and just pumped it out as if it was a live show. I don't know what I could probably go on some news website or something and check in that it is actually live this second. But we don't
hold the newspaper and then hold the clock. You know how they do those hostages? Do one of those things.
Well, with that, Victor, should we jump into some sales news, mate?
Let's do it.
This is from Corn Ferry. And I thought this is really interesting. This is some data that's showing the top 10 deal makers and top 10 deal breakers for modern B2B salespeople. I'll read some of these out. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through them, Victor, but on the top of the list, on the deal maker side, understanding, this is what buyers say when they've been interviewed about deals that have been done, understanding my business, my situation, and my needs. Below that, demonstrating ROI or value. Below that, actively listening. Now, deal breakers are essentially the opposite of this. Buyers say that deal breakers are when salespeople don't understand me or my business, talked too much or did not seem to listen, was not supportive after the sale. Is this obvious, Victor, or is this some useful data here? Oh dear, Victor, we've lost your voice, mate. You just sound really quiet. We were going so well. We were like 3 minutes in. 3 minutes in. You just sound really quiet. So I will let you try and suss things out, perhaps, because I don't know if it's the same issue potentially as what we had last week. And I will continue looking through some of this data. Put it back up on the screen here. So I thought it was interesting because it seems obvious, yet we're obviously not doing some of these things as B2B sales professionals if buyers have to tell us that we should be doing it. Just demonstrating ROI, super obvious and clear, right? Actively listening, super obvious and clear. Providing expertise and perspective. And what I also liked about this research from Corn Ferry was that these are all things that are differentiators. Are you back there, Victor?
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
He's back.
I have no idea why this thing goes off anyway. But anyway, what I was saying while I was on mute and miming is that I hope they didn't spend a lot of money on this research, because I could have told them this this is the same. This hasn't changed. Well, I mean, it's good to know that it's still, I guess, the main issue. But here's a question for you, Will. I mean, everybody says that understood my business needs, but how do you reconcile this where, you got people who are jumping from company to company every year and a half and maybe don't understand business? I mean, there's a disconnect in there somewhere.
I think this is really valuable for salespeople from the perspective of you can't win unless you tell me otherwise. And someone else, people watching this live, please comment below your thoughts on this. it's becoming more and more difficult to win in B2B sales unless you're an expert on your market, your customers, and your products. So in medical device sales, in the tiny little space that I was in selling endoscopic camera systems, there we go.
Do not break out the
scope out.
Do not break out the...
I was an expert in that space. So I could bounce around from one company to another, go back and forth, and it didn't change things. In fact, I did do that. I went from Olympus to Storz, went from one company to the biggest direct competitor, the two market leaders in the space, and it didn't affect my ability to sell. It probably improved it because I got the inside scoop on both companies right. But if you're not an expert, you're doing sales just because you can get into a job and you're hoping you're going to make some quick cash. I feel like those roles are going to become they're going to become less, they're going to fall out of existence eventually because there's going to be marketing automation and tools and software and free trials and things like that will solve some of these problems that salespeople have solved in the past. But if you are an expert in your space, if you are a differentiator in your own rights, I think that's really exciting for salespeople because they're the jobs that are going to pay more and they're the jobs where you can go to your boss and say, hey, if I leave, you're knackered because I'm the expert here, as opposed to, hey, I'm just closing deals on the phone. They get teed up to me from marketing. What are your thoughts, Victor? Yeah,
I like what you're saying. And I agree 100% with all the above. I think it's also interesting to note that people often talk about onboarding, right? When we bring somebody or onboarding. But the second component of onboarding is time to value, which is what the study is referring to. Time to value means you're helpful to a customer because you really understand their business. And I think they're two different things. We often talk about onboarding. We never talk about speed to value, where they're actually valuable as an expert to the actual market and what type of training, can be had, whether through your platform or at Salesman or mine at Sales Velocity. Content like that to accelerate their learning is important.
Is there a way, I've never considered this before, and this is a product right there if there is there a way to measure expertise for a specific industry, for example? And in fact, let me rephrase that. Is there a way to measure expertise perhaps with more generic questions of, I'm trying to parse this as I'm saying it. It seems easy to go, well, do you know how long this endoscope is? Do you know what cameras it can go with? Do you know what the angle of focus is? Do you know what the angle of attack is when you go inside the patient? That's all very easy to do, right? We can do that with a checklist. You can become expertise. You can show your expertise on a product via that. But is there a way to measure expertise in a broader sense of Victor is an expert in this market, Will's an expert potentially in another market? Is there a way to measure, I guess expertise and reputation and other things, come into it as well if you're looking for an expert. Basically what I'm looking for, Victor, is some kind of badge that I can put somewhere that says, I'm verified in this. That doesn't really exist in sales, but it exists for engineers, doctors, and other people.
Your point is well taken. Is there some type of certification program that at least says you have a minimal, like a minimal viable product, you have minimal viable knowledge of a certain industry. And then beyond that, obviously, is context-based, right, or situational-based. I don't know, it's a good idea, Will. Is there certification for different types of industries? I don't think it exists, but it's a good idea. I also think that's why there's a lot of these associations, like the National Proctologist of America or the UK, and if you're part of that, doesn't mean you're an expert, but maybe, that's where you can accelerate your growth.
What do you think of, and you may rustle some feathers here, Victor, of all of the, I'm trying not to name one as I say this, but all of the sales institutions and the this of sales and the sales management this of Europe, America. Do you think that they have value in the marketplace, in the discussion that we're having here?
I think they, I'm going to be as polite as I can on this one. You know me well. When I see all these, I just saw one. I'll just highlight one. I just saw one on LinkedIn called Top Sales Awards, right? .com. And I don't mind those things being out there. Award shows are even in the Emmys and the Grammys and the Oscars and everything. It's all, situational context. But when I was looking at this Top Sales Award, I'm sitting there going, I don't believe any of this. I got to be honest. Credibility sometimes is, I get the whole thing that people want to create these organizations to kind of cluster around the like, right? People like them. So it's almost like a tribe thing. I get that piece. I think there's value in exchanging information amongst the tribe. But I also think it's become a little, I don't know if I want to use the word incestuous, but sometimes that's a good word to use because they only elevate people within their group. They don't look outside the group and they become very myopic. And I was looking at these things for awards for top sales awards. If you go to topsalesawards.com, and I went straight to the video piece on live streaming or webinars. And Will, I know your podcast. I know how many downloads you're getting, which are fantastic and incredible numbers, and you're not on that list of nominations. And I know that you spank at least 9 out of 10 of those people on podcasts. I do, because I know your numbers. And I'm like, well, where's Will? You can't have this conversation without this salesman organ. You just can't have it. And so when I see these things, I go, they undermine their own credibility. It becomes a popularity contest amongst the tribe members. And so I'm not, but on the positive side, within these groups, if it's done correctly, you can really garner good information from each other and support each other. I do like that part.
I've not seen any for sales, and I've helped out a few different pieces of content, and I've attended a few events of others and done different things. I've not seen any of these institutions, or however they want to define them, that are like, it only really works when there's one. If there's 27, there's no real value. Everything's so scuppered. If there's one real trade, it's like you've watched boxing in the past, right? It's like boxing. You're the heavyweight champion of the world, but there's 27 different heavyweight championship belts. And then if there's something going on within the space and this person can't fight this person, then they just invent another belt or do a weight class in between two weight classes, and it becomes an absolute mess. Now, this is different, I don't know about in the US, but in the UK, there's typically like the Royal Society of Urologists, and all urologists are part of that. In the UK, what does my missus get? She gets like the BMJ, so the British Medical Journal. I think if you have to be a member of some other Royal Society, and then you to become registered as a doctor in the UK. Now, these institutions make more sense. And I wanted to pose you that because I was just intrigued as to if there was any that stood out in your mind, and it doesn't seem that there
By
is.
the way, the award systems are somewhat irritating to me. The whole awards thing is kind of irritating to me in the first place, because how do you measure sales success through awards? There's salespeople who are probably outselling you and I will right now, who are not on the map, who are not influencers, but yet are killing the market. So what does it really mean to be the top? And I'll end with this one, because I get a lot of these emails, especially through LinkedIn. Hey, Victor, I ran across this list of the top 10 sales, fill in the blank. Why aren't you on that list? And I just have to respond in my most polite way. I said, I really don't care. But I try to be very nice about it because I really don't care. But anyway, that's my thoughts on awards and all that stuff.
Well, there we go. We'll put a pin in that and probably revisit it at some point with the Will and Victor National Worldwide Global Sales Institution. It's only $500 a month to be a member.
That's the other thing. Everybody creates their own name. We could create one right now, right?
Well, I just did. It's $500 a month to be a member of it. You get to put a nice little badge on your LinkedIn profile, and employers probably won't, may not care about it, and it might help you secure your next sales role. There we go.
By the way, if I have to pay to play, I think that's the phrase. If I have to pay to play, it's not worth it. Do you know what I mean? I think that's just some person collecting membership fees from everybody just to make them feel good.
Well, there we go. We'll wrap up that point with that. We'll move on to the next piece of sales news, and this is, I thought this was really interesting. I've never seen this before. This is Ford Motor Company dives into CRM services for the American small business market with Salesforce in the passenger seat. Essentially, a commercial division of Ford Motor Corporation is looking to diversify. I can't get my words out today. Diversify its sources of revenue, and it's teamed up with Salesforce to launch the worst named CRM of all time, Vizr. VIIZR, a CRM for field service tool targeted at meeting the needs of small business owners. I won't run through the rest of this because it's pretty self-explanatory, but I was interested in the fact that maybe Salesforce thought, hey, Salesforce is known for the enterprise. We're known as the big dog in the CRM industry. Maybe we need to create a spin-off product for small businesses so that our perception as being everything for the enterprise doesn't get perhaps diluted by going into the SMB, small, medium business market. Now, why they've partnered with Ford, of all companies, I've no idea. But what are your thoughts on this, Victor?
I think this is a marketing ploy. That's just me. Because Ford is driving this. Salesforce wouldn't be driving this. Ford has to drive it. I mean, by the way, it's a great idea, right? Work with Salesforce. You got the name brand. Work with Salesforce to customize a CRM, for your industry. But we've talked about this in the past, how there's all these little boutique CRMs for the real estate industry, for the, the HVAC industry, so forth and so on. So this, to me, is just another flavor of that. I don't see anything too special in this announcement. It's interesting. Horrible acronym. You're right, Visor. But, I'm like, man, nothing to see here. Let's keep it moving. What do you think?
Victor, this isn't just for Ford to use, though. This is for generically and broadly small businesses. So it mentions here in the quote from this article, which you can find over at thisweekinsales.com. This article is from Diginomica. And quote, we're going to help tradespeople schedule field appointments and invoices and manage customer relationships in one integrated cloud platform. This is just for small businesses, plumbers, accountants, everyone else. It isn't just for, what you'd think from Ford, which is like mechanics or car dealerships or something like that.
Well, the way I read it, and maybe I'm reading it too shallow. I'm not going deep enough, but I'm thinking they're going after when you look at a car manufacturer's distribution network and all the people involved with touching the car, maintaining the car, servicing the car, that's who I think this is aimed at. Anything outside of that, man, they're really going after something new.
Yeah, I think it is something new, and we'll keep an eye on it. And
by the way, that is news. If they're gonna go into the open market and compete with all these other CRMs, good luck to you.
What do you think about this from Ford's perspective? In that, the best companies, everything I've read on the best companies, and we talked about last week, Jim Collins' books from Good to Great, and he's got 3 or 4 others that I've skimmed through, but Good to Great is the key one in like his library of work. They all talk about do 1 or 2 things, do them really well, do them for 20, 30 years, do them consistently, and just own a segment. What do you think about a company like Ford who's going off seemingly, and it's one compartment of Ford, going off in a completely different direction?
That scares me. It would be interesting if it was a market adjacency, right? Something very near to what they're doing. But to jump into the CRM world, I'm having a hard time believing that somebody would actually want to do this, because you're going to compete with all these other CRMs. So I don't think it's a great idea. I think, this doesn't have legs, because when you look at the amount of research and development that has to go on, the infrastructure to support a sales platform like what they're developing, that's a lot of money. And the return on investment, short term is not going to be there. So this better be a long-term play, and there better be some type of pre-captured market that they go after to secure some early revenues.
For sure. That makes sense. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll see where this goes. Victor, do you want to throw us on to... I want to run through some of these a bit quicker, so me and you can just have the usual banter and chat at the end. Throw us on to the next subject, mate.
Well, this is Gartner, and it's more about marketing, but I thought I'd point this out. The title of the article is Gartner Eyes Declining Mobile Opt-out Rates, right? And this is over at destinationcrm.com. And the subsection here is the opt-out rate for mobile app tracking will decline from 85% to 60% by 2023. And as consumers gain confidence with untargeted ad, in other words, they're going to say, look, more people are moving towards the screen. Obviously, the mobile, they see a decline, I guess, in opt-out rates. But here's what I really wanted to highlight. Well, maybe get your take on this, because I thought this was kind of like, aha, even though it's not sales, but it's kind of sales, it's more in the marketing realm. By 2023, the volume of ad impressions that TV and streaming media channels deliver during what are traditionally considered working hours will grow by 60%. This comes as working from home is expected to be more the norm for many employees well into 2022. In other words, advertisers are moving their dollars away from the after 5 p.m. Time slots into the 9 to 5 time slots because people are staying more at home. What do you think of that? Well, I found that data point just fascinating.
It's amazing. And it's great for us who have audio podcasts as well. Now, it's going to be very difficult to sell, close deals whilst listening to a podcast in the background. So anyone who's in, I don't know, if you've got like a trucking podcast, it's not a good example because they're not working from home, but they're going to be listening to it day in, day out. If I don't know. What's an example of someone who's now working from home that could listen to a podcast? Maybe an accountant or someone like that.
Well, not even that. I'll give you an example. I listen to, I always have Pandora in the background.
Sure.
I'm too cheap to buy the paid subscription, right? So I got to put up with the advertisements every 45 to 50 minutes. That would be an example of a company dumping more money into that type of platform.
It makes sense.
Yep.
Now, there's obviously a payoff. They have to do calculations, they have to do data analysis here of, are people responsive to the ads? Because unless you're a mega corporation, unless you are like Ford, Salesforce, that we touched on in the previous post, there's value to them being just constantly at the back of your brain, especially car companies, because sure. I think it was it Mercedes or BMW? One of them had, one of their VPs of marketing had a famous quote of, we advertise to you at 7 years old because we know you're going to buy a car at 37. That was the whole philosophy is just, I think it was BMW, like the ultimate driving experience. The ultimate driving experience. You see it in motorsport, you see it here, you see it there. So that when you're 20, 30, 40, whenever you want to buy a nice car, you go, hey, I'll treat myself to a BMW. Yeah. So,
by the way, let me get to the second data point. I think it's also interesting. By 2025, 1 in 5 B2B companies will use artificial intelligence, machine learning to proactively slow down customers' journeys by connecting customers with sales reps during the digital commerce interaction. And I thought that phrase, let me say it again, that phrase that they will proactively slow down the customers' journeys. What are your thoughts on that one? Well, that's an interesting, that's interesting.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
If I want to buy something, I don't want to slow down and speak to a salesperson. I want a salesperson to accelerate the learning process and allow me to make a more informed decision quicker. That seems like old school sales where you're trying to manipulate people, you're trying to grab the time, you're trying to trick them into a phone call where then you can influence them. It sounds like some shenanigans to me, Victor.
I think so, because, when you think about something you want to buy, you want to go on your own customer journey, and you want to build enough knowledge to be able to kind of feel good about being able to ask the right questions. If somebody interrupts you early in the journey, you're still unsure. I don't think that's going to help. So I'm with you on this one. Third bullet point, by 2026, chief marketing officers will dedicate 30% of their influencer and celebrity budgets to virtual influencers like you and I will. Mm-hmm. I thought, throw that in. They're going to give us some money. CMO is going to throw money our way by 2026. What do you think?
I'm experiencing this right now. I've had a couple of deals that have come in for partnerships, for different things, not on the back of, kind of on the back of the audience that we've got, but they've not wanted to advertise in front of my audience, which is traditional advertising, right? So we get like $700,000 an episode, that'd be nice, a month on the podcast. So typically people go, hey, you've got an audience of salespeople, we want to be in front of salespeople, we're going to place an ad here. And obviously those ads pay a lot of our bills and salaries over at salesman.org. I've had a couple of deals come in where they've wanted me to create some content to go on their platform, and they're not even bothered if I really promote it, because they want me as a quote unquote influencer, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. They want to leverage my personal, I guess, trust and the brand that I have within the market to give them the rub directly on their site. And I've never really seen this before. Usually it's people like trying to blag free stuff and get on the podcast and sell kind of that way around. But yeah, I've got a couple of paid gigs coming up where they don't want anything from me other than just to show up and be at different events and things like that, and not even promote it on the back of it. So I am proactively seeing this right now, which is one of the reasons, Victor, why I'm so dogmatic about getting the audience to become experts in their own space. Because sales is one thing. If you're an expert in endoscopes, there's going to be events, brands, companies that are going to want you to promote and work with them. And it's almost like a side hustle that could very quickly become your main gig if you can become known as an expert in your space. What do you think about that, Victor?
Well, I agree. I mean, for you, you don't want to toot your own horn, so I'll toot it for you again. I don't know if you want to share the number of downloads. Do you want to share the number of downloads your podcast gets a month?
It's up and down, but it's around 700,000.
700,000. Now, if that is an influencer status, especially within the I'll say the field of selling, I don't know what is. I'm trying to think about somebody who might have bigger downloads than you, and maybe like a Grant Cardone, maybe.
Oh,
but he's, he's moved into, well, he's moved into real estate, but when he was doing pure sales, he's up there. Who else would you say is up there with those numbers? I have good numbers, but mine are not like that. I've scraped $100,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 125, something like that, but never near 700. So the fact that they're coming to you, I said, that's a big kudos to you. Big thumbs up. Salesman.org. Check it out.
It's just mind-numbingly putting content and banging my head against a brick wall for 6 years.
You worked a lot, man. You worked hard for that, man. That's why when I don't see you on some of these awards, especially on the podcast one, that's gonna be my litmus test. I'm going to say, is Will on there? I'm serious. That's gonna be my litmus test. Is Will on that list? Because if he's not on the list, I'm not looking at the list.
Sure. And let's turn this into like a bit of a learning moment, because I have no background in marketing. I'm just like a knuckle-dragging salesperson like everyone else. So I do have like I don't know what you'd call it, like a tendency towards entrepreneurship. Even my selling style, which we talked about last week, was very much like the stereotypical challenger selling style, as opposed to like a relationship builder or something like that. So that is, for whatever reason, built into me. But I'm just putting all this stuff together, but most of it's blagged until you've done it 50 times. Then it starts to become more seamless and work together and work things out. So the point of that is that if I can do that for B2B sales, you can do that, audience, people listening, for whatever space that you're in, as long as you've got a little bit of an interest in it, because this is not going to happen overnight. It's a 2 to 5 onward kind of year journey. But if I can frigging do this for sales, and Doug, and tell me if you agree with this, Victor, a lot of stuff that we've got to learn to be good at sales is pretty boring. Like sales training, it can be entertaining, interesting, but not all of it is easy to teach once you've taught it 20 times, 50 times. Do you agree with that, or am I off on that?
I don't know how to judge boring. I think it's boring because we've been around it too long. But I think when you're first starting out, a lot of it is exciting. It's a little part of the excitement is the effort/journey of going through the content. But there's something I didn't that was in that article I didn't highlight, which is what you're pointing to, is that also companies are now, in this Gartner article, are also investing in what they call employee advocacy. And it's what you're saying is that employees within a company now will be giving a platform to brand themselves on LinkedIn and almost become like brand ambassadors. And so that is a new role for a salesperson to kind of also have to kind of maybe consider creating content and creating their own image or mark or brand online. So I think that's fascinating as hell.
Yep. And where I was going with that then, Victor, was that if I can do this for what I think is not the most exciting industries, if you work in aerospace, if you work in endoscopes, imaging, anything more exciting than sales training, it's going to be an absolute pleasure to do some of this once you get that initial ball rolling. And if your company is going to support you through that process, and smarter companies should be doing this, as you just outlined them for the Gartner report, then it's a no-brainer. Do the work now, and you're going to see the benefits in the future.
It's going to be a rewiring of the salesperson, the future salesperson, because again, it took them a long time just to get on Zoom. Imagine asking people now, build blogs, do videos, record podcasts. They're going to go, what? Bam, boom, head explodes.
Fair enough. Well, we'll jump into the next article here, and this is from TechCrunch.com. Company Connect the Dots collects 15 million Series A to help what they call the company's graph connections. Let me pull this back up here.
I kind of like the name. I got to be honest. I kind of like the name. I usually rip a name. Like, for example, I don't like Corn Ferry. That one's always bothered me.
I assume that's someone's surnames, though, right? It's probably Mr. Corn and Mr. Ferry.
Yeah. It's like, Mrs. Ferry. It just doesn't work. I don't care whose name it is, just doesn't work. But anyway, I like Connect the Dots. Go on, Will. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So a former Salesforce executive wants to make it easier to find connections, and he's building Connect the Dots. It helps to personalize and bring a professional relationship, what they're calling a graph, together. And the reason I include this, Victor, I've got one question to ask you at the end of this, but I'll explain what it is first. The way it works is you sign up and it scans your email accounts looking for connections at different companies. It correlates this data. And then when you look at a particular company, you can see who you know who knows someone who works there. And the strength of your connection is measured by 3 colored dots. So they've got like a graphical elements to this as well. And Drew Schrist, dude, we get so many names wrong on this show. Like
I would have pronounced it see Christ.
See Christ. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
Drew,
go see Christ.
Drew at C. Christ, who was employee number 36 at Salesforce in 1999, believes that email is the key connector. Quote, we've got these emails that have been piling up forever representing relationships, and we didn't have any way to pull them together and get value out of them. But technology was getting to a point where machine learning, some other advanced techniques that we could extract value from the data and then build a graph of relationships to see who actually knows who. Now, on the surface, this seems like, I've got all this data there. It's not being used. We could mine it. Maybe I know someone. Maybe Victor knows someone and can make me an introduction. And if you don't know what you don't know, you can't act on that information, right? But my question for you, Victor, is, especially coming from the perspective of, this is different if it's like you're an enterprise salesperson, you don't really own your email account. You own your email account. I own my email account as small business owners. Would you let some random startup go into your email, pull out tons of contact data, and who knows what else from your emails, and then give you a few green or red dots to see? You don't
want to go into my email that deep, man. I have to say no. I mean, the answer is no. I mean, I think it's. Can I just read one more quote, because I was reading the article and I recognize the name here. This is from I think it's Eli Cohen. And I spoke with Eli Cohen on a artificial intelligence forum for ISP, which is the Inside Sales something professional. And so I know the guy. He was CEO of Saleshood. It says, quote, connect the dots is the missing link in relationship selling that none of the other networks have solved at scale with elegance. I'm just going to say that again. So he said that nobody else has solved at scale and with elegance. You know, one is, which is like, I think it's incredible because I think there's a lot of people who have this. There's no other system that is developed with such thoughtfulness and experience around how you manage your real life relationships online. This isn't, just another SaaS platform. This is the future of business networking. Man, talk about a lot of hyperbole on that one. But I'm thinking, again, is it me? Love the name, kind of like the concept, but nothing to see here. Let's keep her moving. Who isn't doing this already? Who isn't doing this at a large scale? Are you telling me Salesforce can't do this? Are you saying Salesforce can't do this? Are you saying Pipedrive can't do this? Chorus, pick your platform. I disagree with the premise.
Can't do something and are proactively doing something is different, right? So this might be the kind of startup that gets gobbled up by someone, gets implemented into their current sales solution, right? But I think there's value to something like this in the enterprise when you've got 1,000 sales, or not 1,000, but say 300 salespeople, and they're changing jobs all the time, and this email account has 20,000 email addresses in it or emails within it. Maybe VP of sales, marketing in that organization, we own those emails. There's probably nothing too untoward in them that's going to be embarrassing if it gets pulled out from a sales rep. Maybe we should leverage the data that we've got. I think there's some value in that, but for small business owners, for individuals, this is proper creepy. Yeah,
I mean, by the way, up in the article, this is a Northwest Ventures Partners, and basically, they're calling it the intersection between LinkedIn, Salesforce, and ZoomInfo. That's kind of what they're saying. If we can take these three platforms and bring them all together, well, first of all, they have some relationship with Salesforce, but they have to get these platforms to agree. But still, we have to give the information. I think to me, it's just a massive plugin. That's an expensive plugin.
Well, you're making a few assumptions there. Maybe it is a plugin. You don't know if it's expensive. And it's a ROI that we're looking for, isn't it? The expense can be offset by the value.
You could be totally right. I could be totally full of it. I'm just saying that they aren't selling me, and I wouldn't give up $15 million. And by the way, in relative numbers, $15 million isn't a lot of money. And so I think this is let's put this out there, let's try it, and let's see what happens. If I'm wrong, Eli Cohen, see Christ, send us something on thisweekinsales.com. Leave us a comment. I'd be more than happy to correct myself. If I'm wrong, I will.
For sure. And for the people watching this live, and if you watch this after the fact, if you're watching it live, leave a comment in the chat box. Let us know your thoughts. If you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment below the video, and we'll review some of the comments from this week, next week.
And this is not a recording. This is live.
This is as live as it gets. Hence, Victor having audio issues. This is going to now become like a feature of Victor as a loose cable every single week.
I don't know what it is, Will, but thank you for reminding people of my screw-ups.
It's not me, mate. I've got to put the pressure on your side. Okay, let's move on to this next one. We'll quickly go through this. I've just got a few. I don't want to dwell on the person and the business, but I want to touch on the topic itself. So this is from propertyindustryeye.com and entitled "Well-known estate agency trainer suspends courses indefinitely."
No. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I reacted too quickly to this one.
This is well-known trainer Adam Walker has announced he's not going to be running any more training courses after 33 years, after 150,000 people have attended his courses. And he said, and he explains, since 1987, I was one in 1987, for context, over 150,000 people have attended my training courses. I've enjoyed running them enormously. And I met some wonderful people along the way. I can't run them anymore. It continues. The first issue here is the pandemic. COVID changed the sales and management training market forever. For several months, it was illegal, Victor, to run a training course. Now it's possible. People get face-to-face training, right? I guess that's what he's going at here, as opposed to Zoom training or anything like that. It was illegal to run a training course. Now it's possible to run one, but the demand for traditional training is only a fraction of what it was once before. The majority of the training is now delivered online, but I don't believe it's possible to achieve the same results in a virtual course. Victor, is it possible?
I'm starting to smell something. Is it
possible, sales training specifically, to deliver what you can deliver in person, online, virtually?
First of all, so I think Adam's playing with some phrases here. First of all, after 33 years, he will be missed by somebody. Second, I think the pandemic has basically just accelerated the digital transformation shift. That's it. And so he can either choose to be on board or remain a Luddite and not do it. So my question to Adam Walker would be, it's always easy. It's a mindset. It's always easy to say, it's not as effective. It's a cop-out. Listen to me, Adam Walker. It's a cop-out to say that. Let me tell you what you should say to yourself. How can I make it just as effective as face-to-face? What tools, what technology, what can I use to make it just as effective? So, because I could argue that sometimes face-to-face isn't effective. So I think it's a cop-out. I think he's done. He doesn't want, since they're not going to do any more lives for a while, he's saying, you know what? 33 years, good run. Later, people, I'm done with you.
So you didn't answer my question, Victor. I want to tie you down on this.
I think you can be as effective virtually as you can face-to-face. Yes, I am making that declaration.
I agree.
The question is, how do you do
it? How do you do it?
Different. Yeah. Of course it's different, but I mean, it's like when something new comes along, says, well, it'll, you ever had that cartoon we had here in the U.S. where the guy would always say, "It'll never work. It'll never work." That was his famous line. That's how I feel when I hear this stuff. Virtual selling, it'll never work. Shut up. It's working. Somebody's making it work.
I think that's a fair way to put it, right? Someone's doing it. So
someone's doing it.
Why not? Why not take advantage of this?
Yeah.
I think you've had the same. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you had the same reaction than what I did. So pre-COVID, I didn't do any. I did a few in-person things, and a few live events with the podcast and stuff. But I was so adamant that our online training platform is cheaper, more scalable, more measurable, the results, than in-person training, the very few in-person training events that I've done, which I probably enjoy doing them more than creating content for the online training platform, if I'm brutally honest, because you get to mingle, get audience reactions, go back and forth and workshop and coach in person. But I was so adamant that the training benefits and the cost benefits and the scalability of the online training platform was what I should be focusing on, that I started developing that all before COVID. I know you had your online training platform, the Sales Velocity Academy, before that as well. I found, just to prove the point here, our people signing up, our revenue skyrocketed and hasn't come back down, like, as the pandemic changes and goes back and forth and goes in and out of news cycles. We're just going up and up and up. So that tells me that the market agrees with my assumption that online training is here to stay and can be just as effective in certain ways and more effective in others than in-person training.
Yeah, I agree. When I like, and I don't mean to jump all over at Adam Walker. I don't even know the guy, but we romanticize face to face. That's another thing we got to realize. We romanticize the effectiveness of face to face. How many times, for those of you listening out there, how many times have you gone to a sales training where the folks in your training just partied the night before? They basically hobbled into your workshop, just hung over the whole bit, and you're telling me that was going to be an effective training? I mean, there's so many situations where the training wasn't effective face-to-face. So I think it's neither this, neither that. But to say that one is better than the other, I don't agree. But I do know that virtual selling, remote selling, distance selling, call it what you want, whatever flavor, it's here to stay. And I think it's the way we're going to do things.
Amazing stuff. Well, let's move on to some culture corner, some more off the beaten path of sales training and sales technology news here. You may not be familiar with this video, and I can fill in some of the pieces if you like. But this broke my brain recently. Downing Street had a Christmas party, allegedly had a Christmas party last year when the rest of the country was in lockdown. Now, this was not Boris himself getting ladded and snogging people at a Christmas party under the mistletoe, but it was some of his close staff, aides, different people that work in Downing Street here in the UK, which is where the Prime Minister lives, but it's also offices as well. Victor, this is a bad look for politicians, right? Where they're saying, hey, you guys do one thing. Christmas is cancelled. You can't go out. You can't mix. There was like rules of you can only see so many family members and you've got to do this and this. And they said something I regret then. These idiots are having a frigging Christmas party.
Oh, we've had our own little scandals over here where I think it was the governor of California went through a recall election. Part of it was because he was caught having a little dinner party, no mask, when he was telling everybody else you can't do that. So there's been many cases of do as I say, not as I do type of thing. And I think the public has had enough of that. That's just my opinion. I think they've had enough of it. I think they, but it is hypocritical, right? Like, remember when they were at the G7, G9? I forget which number it is. But there was somebody who was videoing their photo shoot, and nobody had masks on. And then I guess when everybody come back in, we're done taking our pictures. Everybody slapped their mask on. Just things like that are just a bit hypocritical, I think.
Well, it was one of them. And again, I don't want to, without the facts in front of me, say not that the audience of this show is big enough to have an impact, right? But I also don't want to get sued. There was one of these global environmental summits, and everyone had flew in on private planes. And the private planes are the worst.
I know.
Warming. It's terrible.
These are people who are green, right? They're really concerned about the environment. They got 12 SUVs for protection.
Just the optics of that. Surely you just book out half of first class or something, and you go on a commercial airliner just for that one visit. Just so you don't come across like a right idiot. I don't understand how. Maybe it's just these politicians are so high up in the ivory towers that they just don't understand what us plebs see, and they don't really care about our thoughts and opinions until the week before election. But politics is so weird.
I'm sure they are part of the ivory tower. There's an elitism part of that to it. But I think it's also interesting how they're able to rationalize away how it's okay for them to do it, but not you. Well, I need to make this trip. Well, I need my 7 SUVs to protect me because fill in the blank. So I'm sure they find their own logic. As I'm writing my new book, The Big Deal Mindset, one of the things I talk about is this phrase called the self-sealing logic. Self-sealing logic basically means you buy into your own BS, and if anybody challenges, you defend it or you ignore information that's contrary to what you believe. And I think that's kind of what they do. They just go, I'm different. I need to do this, but you guys need to wear a mask.
I know you're familiar with this idea of cognitive biases, Victor. And
sure.
There's tons of them, right? My question to you is, how much do you think of our day-to-day activities are subconsciously just done? They're going to happen. They're inevitable because of our cognitive biases and different shortcuts our brain takes to very literally try and not burn energy when it doesn't have to. How much of our daily activities do you think are conscious versus we're just on this path that we're probably never going to get off on.
And we're just on, I think the majority of the time we're just on a path. And I'm becoming more aware of it. Again, as I'm writing this book, I'm becoming more aware of what are habits that I do, things that I do because they're routine, right? Or thought processes that I have that are, if this, do that, if this, then that. And we have a lot of those, as you pointed out, those rules of thumbs, those heuristics in our brains. And I think if I were to put slab of percentage, we're at least 80%.
Yep.
Because the amount of cognitive loading that would go on if you had to kind of make every decision based on conscious information would be just overwhelming.
Have you ever been hypnotized?
It didn't work. They tried, but it didn't work. I got to tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? It's a real quick story. Yeah. So we're at a dinner theater with another couple, and then the other couple had a young lady who was a guest, right, from out of town, and they brought her along. So there's 5 of us. We're all the way in the back. We're enjoying dinner at this table. This hypnotist then takes the stage, right? And he does all the mumbo jumbo, the whole thing. And then he gets this one part when he says a key word, bark. People are going to bark, right? So he has these people lined up on stage. And sure enough, they start barking when he says this key word. But here's the part that freaked us out. The girl who was just a guest with us started barking from the table. I swear to you, she started barking from the table. Not barking like, right. She just went, wrong. And as soon as she barked, she like caught herself. I just thought it was hilarious. So it doesn't work. I believe for some people, it does work.
There's definitely, well, they've done studies on it. Obviously, some of it is woo-woo nonsense. As I choke to death live on air. That'd be a good ending to the show, wouldn't it?
See, it's not live, and Will's not alive anymore. So there it is.
So they've measured why people are more susceptible to it than others, and a lot of it comes down to your levels of empathy and things like that. Of you can manipulate people into doing things, saying things, believing things, because the social pressure to do so is so massive that they're thinking, and it's all subconsciously that if they don't do it, they're going to embarrass people, upset people, whatever it is. Whereas I think people like yourself and I, who I've done different experiments. Well, it's just we're too logical, our brains, and our brains will subconsciously reject some of this stuff. But the reason I ask you that, Victor, is if 80% of our stuff that we do each day is automatic, just plodding along down this path, and we're trying to just nudge it one way or the other, so that in 10 years it ends up in a far better place versus just the average performance that a lot of people fall into the trap of. I was going to ask if hypnotism could be a way to rewire our brains, because I feel like if you could have some kind of program, some kind of training, something like that you just listen to before bed that makes you consider. I think
it might work, Will, if there's I'll call it a one-line algorithm, right? By one-line algorithm meaning that, for example, if I wanted to quit smoking, I can then, kind of in my subconscious mind, if I was a hypnotist, program somebody, when you see this, when you have the urge to get a cigarette, grab a lollipop. And I think it may work at that level where it's kind of a one-line algorithmic thing. But to rewire your brain. Can
everything that we do be distilled into one-liners, though? Probably.
No.
Do you not think? Do you think our decision-making processes are more complicated than binary, if this and that, yes, then no? I think everything that we do can be drilled down into those simple binary decisions, no matter how complex the decision seems on the outside. I think if we drill it down, we can really get to that.
Well, that's how decision trees are made, right? They're always like binaries, right? You're going down the decision tree. So yeah, I disagree with you. But hey, Will, I got a story I want to share with you, and we'll wrap up with this one. I want you to tell me what you think of this. Digital mortgage company, Better.com. Just remember the name, Better.com. Laid off about 900 employees on a single Zoom call, abruptly scheduled just a week ahead of the holidays. U.S. media reported Monday. Quote from the CEO, "If you're on this call, you are part of that unlucky group that is being laid off," said CEO Michelle Garb during last call Wednesday. Well, what are your thoughts?
What a dick. What a... He, the CEO, Vishal Garg, has to be dim. I'm sure he's like bright and intelligent to be in the CEO of a big company, but you have to have no empathy. You've got to be slightly like on just broken to think that's an appropriate thing to do. Now, of course, the CEO's not going to be ringing 900 people, right? It's impossible. 50 calls, 500 calls in, he's just going to be like, well, it's taken him all week and he's not going to get through it practically. But to do that and to frame it up, and I saw the video clip of it as well, which I've not got teed up here, but we could play video clips and stuff on future episodes. He just didn't. Because at the beginning of the call, he starts going on about, before he tells people, everyone, you're on the call, you're fired. Before he says that, he goes, oh, I had to go through this at a different company in the past. I cried then. I'm going to be stronger now. I don't care. It's not to do with you. You've still got your job for the moment anyway. I'm sure if it's a company with investors or going towards an IPO, he'll be out of there because he's just bad press after messing this up, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, first of all, the company's called Better.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to do better. And then he does it before the holiday. He was getting roasted yesterday on LinkedIn. Yeah. That's why I saw the article. Just roasted. Because why would you do this right before the holidays?
Well,
that's what got me.
There's probably Christmas bonuses. There's probably different things going on. There's never going to be.
See, this is where capitalism gets a bad name. This is exactly where capitalism gets a bad name. When people do stuff like that, there's like, they knew, Will, 2-3 months ago that they probably had to do this. And by the way, this isn't like a trim. This is like a haircut. I don't know what percentage 900 is out of that, but this is a haircut.
You're saying that as if you know the experience, Victor.
Yeah, I know when all your hair is taken off, man. I'm telling you, I know how it feels, man. I know how it feels.
This isn't a haircut. This is a Victor haircut.
Yeah, this is a Victor haircut. But 900, Will. I mean, they had to know, right? They had to know somewhere 2-3 months ago that the trend wasn't moving in the right direction. Then I would have begun, it's easier to get fired 2-3 months ago than it is right before the holidays.
Sure.
By the way, Merry Christmas.
We don't know how that works, right? This might be better to do it now than to do it on the 25th of December. So let's give them that little bit of leeway. But Victor Antonio,
that leeway. I'm not giving them that leeway. You do it on the 2nd or the 3rd of January.
Sure.
Okay.
But maybe there's not the runway to do that. But that's an aside. It was a crappy way to break the news. I thought was the big deal as opposed to time.
Damage control, PR. This is a PR nightmare.
Well, let me ask you this, Victor Antonio. Victor Antonio Enterprises has 3,000 employees.
Right.
Victor Antonio Enterprises made the wrong bet and refused to do any virtual training and is all in person and is failing. Unfortunately, in this scenario that I've just made up, you've got to let go of 1,000 employees, Victor. And I'll give you more pressure here, mate. You've got to get it done before the 1st of January. There's no more runway. There's no more cash in the bank. It's got to happen. Otherwise, the whole company is going to collapse. And then 3,000 people are going to be out on their asses out of work. How do you let 1,000 people who love Victor Antonio, who are sold on the mission of Victor Antonio Enterprises, how do you let them know that they don't need to come in person or virtually on Monday?
Okay, so this has to assume that 2-3 months ago, I had no clue this was going to happen.
Yeah, market changes, market conditions. There's just been a global pandemic. There's something. The S has hit the fan.
Well, yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. Well, if let me just take both scenarios and I'll answer your question in the second scenario. In the first scenario, I would have known 3-4 months out easily what the trajectory was. But let's assume I didn't know that, right? And all of a sudden, shit hits the fan. It's over. It's like something unexpected came up. Well, then if I make the announcement, first of all, I wouldn't I would bring all 3,000 people on and said, here's what just happened to the company. Because of that, we're going to have to make drastic adjustment. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of this will have to happen before Christmas. Over the next week or two, we're going to assess and see where we're at. And then at least you've primed people to say it's coming, right? And then make the announcement. Now, I don't know if 2 weeks is the right time for it. Could be a week. But I would bring everybody on board, said, here's what's happened. Here's the situation. We got to let go. And we're estimating 1/3 of you will not be here at the beginning of the year. And then you apologize profusely for not seeing it. But if it was an event that you couldn't have predicted, I think people would be more sympathetic. Go, oh, damn, I get that. I understand. I don't like the decision, but I get it.
So that, though, from a pure capitalistic perspective, and that might not be the best term to tee it up, but you can give me your thoughts on it. That's going to cause turmoil within the company for 2 weeks, which might set you back even further and have even more layoffs, because you might have key members of staff going, I don't know if it's me, and so I'm going job hunting, and so people are going to be going back and forth. And so then you put in people's happiness.
The thing is, I would go to each manager of each division or each department, and the managers would know, all right, here's what I need you guys to do, and here's what you tell your team. So then you have a management meeting. Here's what you tell your team. And then you begin letting the managers handle the announcements, and you as a CEO can remove yourself from making that, that the actual individual. I mean, it's easier when your manager says, look, I tried, got to let you go. As opposed to some CEO kind of getting on there going, okay, I'm going to be stronger now. I'm a much better person as a new CEO, and I got bad news for you. Not for me.
Yep.
But for you, and I'm going to be stronger in delivering that bad news. I've worked on myself. My inner purpose and direction is clear. I will not cry. I will deliver this bad news with a straight face. I mean, it's like zero empathy. Did you sense any empathy in that video?
No. I interviewed, this won't be a long tangent, but I interviewed a researcher that researches psychopaths. This is years ago on the Selling podcast.
I love this setup already. Go ahead.
I can't remember the guy's name. Absolute legend. I had a right blast, and I've emailed him back and forth a bunch of times. I should get him back.
By the way, out of curiosity, is it a psychopath or a sociopath?
So the different terms, right? I don't know how you define the difference between the two, but he researched very specifically psychopaths. So little empathy. I think that is the definition for it.
Okay.
And the reason I had him on was because a lot of executives, C-suites, and the people that we're trying to sell into have psychopathic tendencies. Now, it doesn't mean that people running around with a hatchet, like chopping people to bits. Yeah. It just means that the empathy may be skewed one way or another.
Yeah.
And if I'm quite frank and honest, maybe I'm on this kind of like psychopath spectrum to like, if the scale is 100, maybe I'm on it 1 or 2%. Anyway, being kind of small business owner and being in a mindset where I'm happy to kind of put my own ego on the line and stuff. There's probably a level of this in myself. But the reason I had him on was because all these executives that he was interviewing and researching were all frigging psychopaths. So when you're talking about empathy and a lack of it, there's probably psychological traits that go along with that predispose people to get into those positions.
By the way, so here's the definition of psychopaths. Psychopaths tend to be more manipulative, can be seen by others as more charming, lead a semblance of a normal life, and minimize risk in criminal activity. Sociopaths tend to be more erratic, rage-prone, and unable to lead as much a normal life. So it's 7 symptoms of a psychopath. Superficial charm, high intelligence, poor judgment, fits. Let me see. Egocentricity, incapacity of love, lack of remorse or shame. Okay, the man's a psychopath. You're right. The man's a psychopath.
So there we go. I'll link to this interview I did, because it turns out the guy, this is the big twist of the podcast episode, which I knew beforehand. He scanned his own brain just as a laugh one weekend. I think he was calibrating some of the gear, because he was doing functional MRI scans on these people. Turns out he was a psychopath as well. I didn't realize it, but then he was like, "Oh, this all fits." That was the big twist of things.
If you got to know one, right? You got to be one to know one type of thing. So yeah. But anyway, I think it was a bad way. It could have been handled better, and I feel bad for 900 people who have to go into the Christmas season with that albatross around their neck, on their head, on their shoulder, wherever the hell the albatross hangs out.
Well, there we go, Victor. We'll wrap up with that depressing news. Thank you for including that one on This Week in Sales. Anything to add? Oh, tell us about the Big Deal Mindset webinar that's coming up tomorrow. So if you're watching this live right now, get over to, is there a specific URL people need to go to?
VictorAntonio.com. So the Big Deal Mindset is really about how do you change your mindset? And so I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of memory distortion, limiting beliefs, and a few other things. So it's not a rah-rah. So anybody's looking for a rah-rah presentation, this isn't it. But it's going to be a very revealing webinar, 3-hour webinar. We're going to have some Q&A throughout on how you think, why you think, and what's really holding you back. And I think people are going to walk away going, Now I see it. Now I get what's pulling me back, and then give them some tools and tactics to kind of get them over that hump. You mentioned earlier, Will, about, whether it's unconscious or conscious, right? And a lot of the stuff that holds us back is unconscious. If we agree with the 80%, there's a lot of stuff there that's just kind of dragging us down just a little bit. And so hopefully this webinar is also part mindset/awareness of what may be going on in that beautiful brain of yours.
Amazing stuff. Well, I'll link to that and Victor's training in general in the show notes of this episode over at This Week in Sales. I'll link it in a comment below this video in case you're not watching it live and you're catching up after the fact. And with that, we'll wrap up there. That is Victor Antonio. I nearly said sales legend. Sales royalty. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder over at salesman.org, and we'll speak with you again next week on This Week in Sales.